The tunnel was officially closed years ago after a collapse killed several workers, but locals still used it because the detour added nearly an hour to the drive. They said the danger signs were exaggerated and that the tunnel was structurally safe, even if it felt wrong. I drove through it for the first time just after midnight because the road was empty and I was tired enough to ignore instinct. The entrance swallowed my headlights almost immediately, and the darkness inside felt thicker than it should have, like light itself was being absorbed instead of reflected. The tunnel lights flickered on one by one as I entered, creating the illusion of movement ahead, even though the road was completely empty. At first, everything felt normal. The radio worked, the engine sounded steady. The tunnel stretched forward exactly as long as it was supposed to. Then the lights behind me went out. I glanced at the rearview mirror and saw only blackness where the entrance should have been, as if the tunnel had sealed itself shut. I told myself it was just a power issue, because panic feeds on imagination, and imagination feeds on silence. That was when the radio crackled. A low voice came through the speakers, distorted and uneven, asking calmly if I had seen the children yet. I turned the radio off immediately, but the voice kept talking, now coming from everywhere at once, echoing along the concrete walls. The tunnel lights began switching off ahead of me instead of behind me, plunging sections of road into darkness as I approached them. I accelerated, because slowing down felt like surrender. That was when I saw the footprints. They were small, barefoot, and wet, appearing on the dry road as if something invisible were walking just ahead of my car. The footprints stopped suddenly, right in the middle of the lane. I slammed the brakes. For a moment there was nothing. Then hands appeared on my windshield. They were pale, pressed flat against the glass from the outside, leaving smeared marks as if whatever they belonged to was sliding downward. I screamed and reversed instinctively, but the tunnel behind me had changed. The walls were closer, the ceiling was lower, the road was narrower. I realized with horror that the tunnel was shrinking, not physically but perceptually, like something was adjusting it to fit me. The voice returned, clearer now, telling me that the tunnel did not kill people, but kept them, and that no one ever truly left once they reached the middle. The headlights flickered, and in that brief strobe of light I saw them. Figures standing along the walls, dozens of them, adults and children, all facing the road, all perfectly still, with their eyes reflecting light far too brightly. They were not watching the car, they were watching me. The engine died. The tunnel went completely dark. I felt breath near my ear and heard a whisper asking me to turn the headlights back on, because they wanted to be seen. When I woke up, my car was parked on the other side of the tunnel in daylight, engine cold, doors unlocked. Police said I had passed through hours earlier without stopping. Traffic cameras showed nothing unusual. No figures, no lights failing, no delay. But when they reviewed the footage frame by frame, they noticed something impossible. In every frame, my headlights were on. And in every reflection along the tunnel walls, someone was standing behind the camera, smiling. They closed the tunnel permanently the next day. People still drive past it at night. They say if you stop and turn off your headlights, you can hear footsteps inside moving deeper, always deeper, never coming out. After the night the emergency phone rang, I began to feel as though something had finally acknowledged me, and that recognition made the world above ground feel thinner and less real. I stopped leaving my house unless it was absolutely necessary, because every road felt like it was quietly rearranging itself to point back toward the tunnel. Sleep became impossible, because whenever I closed my eyes, I felt the sensation of standing still while the world moved forward without me. One evening, as rain fell steadily outside, I noticed my living room lights flicker in the same rhythm as the tunnel lights had that night, and my chest tightened with recognition. The voice returned again, this time calm and almost reassuring, and it told me that the tunnel was not calling me back, because I had never truly left it behind. It explained that the middle of the tunnel was not a physical location, but a point where people realize they are no longer moving forward in their lives. The voice told me that some people reach that point in basements, hospitals, or bedrooms, but that I had been fortunate enough to reach mine underground. I tried to argue with it, because arguing felt like resistance, but the voice only responded by asking me why my memories of the tunnel ended so abruptly. That question stayed with me until dawn, when I finally understood that I could not remember how I reached the other side, because I never actually drove through. Later that day, news broke that maintenance workers had discovered something new inside the tunnel while inspecting structural damage caused by recent rain. They found tire marks that stopped suddenly in the exact center of the tunnel, as if a vehicle had been lifted straight upward through the concrete ceiling. I felt my stomach drop when they showed photographs of the marks, because the pattern matched my tires perfectly. That night I returned to the tunnel willingly, because running from something only teaches it how much power it has. The entrance looked unchanged, but the darkness inside felt warmer, almost welcoming, as though it had been expecting me. I walked instead of driving because the voice had told me that machines were unnecessary where I was going. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became, until even my footsteps sounded distant and unreal. When I reached the center, I felt a pressure behind my eyes, followed by a sudden clarity that made my knees buckle. I realized then that the figures I had seen were not trapped souls, but reflections of people who had reached this place and decided not to move on. They were not prisoners, they were anchors. The voice thanked me for returning, because balance requires replacement, and the tunnel could not remain stable without someone willing to stay aware. I understood that leaving had never been the danger, because forgetting was. When I stepped fully into the darkness, the tunnel lights turned on one last time, and I saw myself standing at the entrance, frozen in hesitation. Authorities later reported that a pedestrian was seen entering the tunnel on camera, but no one ever emerged. They closed the tunnel permanently the following week. Drivers passing by at night sometimes claim that their headlights flicker, and that for a brief moment the road ahead looks longer than it should. They say it feels like something is watching to see if they will keep moving. I hope they do, because stopping is how the tunnel finds you.